Welcome to the People's Forum. I'm your host, Kwame Ennis. We've got a fantastic show today, something very near and dear to my heart. The U.S. Virgin Islands, approximately 1,200 miles from Florida, U.S. territory. We spoke about this in recent segments, but this is about the recovery. This is about Hurricane Irma / Maria, which occurred September 6th through the 16th of 2017. And it's really, really important that we give the smaller islands a little more attention. In past, we've focused primarily on Puerto Rico, not because they got any more or any less damage, but I think simply because of population, and that's the way things worked out. But now, today, it's about us. It's about West Indians, Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, all one. Good afternoon. We have our guest, Mr. Sherman Browne, the Chief Empowerment Officer of AIM High International. Welcome to the show.
All right, thank you, Kwame. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and in full disclosure, I've got a ringer here. Miss Kimberly Newton-Nichols, spokesperson of the USVI Freshwater Association, and a high school friend and dear friend and teammate at Kennedy Knight. Miss Nichols.
Thank you for having us. Good to see you again.
That's wonderful to have you here. Wonderful to have you here. All right, without taking any time, without wasting any time, I want to get right into it. Mr. Browne, what was your assessment of the situation, the hurricane, September 6th, 2017?
Yeah, well, September 6th, 2017 was very devastating. When I heard about the storm that was going down there, we were concerned. Growing up in the Virgin Islands, I was there for, when we had Hurricane Hugo, Hurricane Marilyn, and I knew those two were bad. So when I heard that this storm was going down there, I knew that it was going to be bad, but didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And on September 6th, when the hurricane hit, and when I couldn't get in contact with any of my family who was still down there in the islands, I knew something was wrong. I knew it was different from how it was before. So just really seeing the videos and everything else that started to ensue shortly thereafter, I recognized that this storm was worse than anything that had ever been experienced in the Virgin Islands before.
So based on your experience, this storm was catastrophic.
Absolutely catastrophic. So it was so important that when we see this, us being here in the States, seeing it from a distance, that we had to prepare ourselves mentally to take action. But it's hard when you're trying to reach out to family members and you can't reach them. You can't speak to your uncle, your grandfather, and you know that in their older age that they don't really have much resources and stuff like that. So it was devastating, and just to see the images was something that was heart-wrenching for me.
Kim, did you have the same experience?
Pretty much the same exact experience. Our organization initially started with Hurricane Hugo, and we took action, formed an organization for that same reason. People can't communicate, can't reach their loved ones. So we acted as a liaison. Reach us, and we'll try to reach whoever we can to reach out. So when this particular hurricane hit, we had just lost my dad. Okay. So for my mom to get a reprieve, she flew down to be with her sister and her family. And then this hurricane hit, and now my family's like, Mom is there, we can't reach her. So we reached together as an organization and said, we have to do something. Again, we're watching this on the news. You can't, and it's building, and it's building of how bad it's going to be. We spoke to her on and off. They still had cellular service, but as you watch it on the news and see the whole waterfront starting to go and lines coming down, it becomes a reality of what is about to happen.
Which island in particular was Mom in?
Mom was on St. Thomas.
St. Thomas, okay, with the hills.
Right, with the hills. It was unnerving because you're going through a stream of emotions, and now it hit close to home. It's one thing when it's your family, distant relatives, you still are concerned with friends and family, but now it's personal.
Okay.
And
give us a little background on the Freshwater Association.
Freshwater Association, the president is Helen George Newton, and it has its board members. And again, when Hugo hit, everybody volunteered to help, from raising money, getting canned goods, going around to cleaners for people to donate clothes so we can send back to everyone to try to help out. So that happened with Hurricane Hugo in '91. So it's 27 years coming up on that this organization has been running. Everything from, we don't just help the Virgin Islands. Everyone from the Caribbean know we all is one.
Exactly.
So we help all islands, anybody who's in need. We've even done things where we help kids when they go to college, giving money to help. And it's to educate the youth, to keep the culture going, keep the culture alive.
For our people who don't understand the geography of the Virgin Islands via Puerto Rico, the United States, tell us a little bit about that, Sherman.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Puerto Rico is literally a 30-minute flight away from the Virgin Islands. So when that got hit, for it to be so
A flight or the goose. Don't.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it's very much that close. So when the islands got
Tell
hit,
them what the goose is. They have no idea what the goose
What you
is.
just said, yeah.
well, we're talking about, look, you could swim over or you could just catch a boat over. If you need to get over there very quickly, it's that close and easy for you to get over there. So it's very close. And so it was unfortunate that when the storm hit, and look, all the islands got hit. But when you heard people speak so much about Puerto Rico, but neglected to speak about the Virgin Islands, it was disheartening, especially because we're U.S. territory as well. So we knew at that point in time, look, you have to take action. You have to try to find a way to get the information out there and to be a part of the solution now that we had that catastrophic problem.
On our, if you remember correctly, on our Puerto Rico episode, we spoke quite in depth about the neglect that the Puerto Ricans felt, both here, and on the island. We spoke with Mr. Xavier Basabe, who was on our panel, and we spoke about that. But how about the Crucians and the St. Thomians and the St. John people who weren't even at the discussion?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it was heartbreaking.
It was terrible. I grew up on St. John, right? And my family is in St. John. We had no contact, no communication. There was no way to really communicate. And even with the cell service that was working was really mainly people on St. Thomas who had access to that service. So
And St. John is a smaller
It's much
island and a
smaller
lot
island.
more isolated.
absolutely. And
But as
because-
they say, with the most beautiful beaches in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Trunk Bay, #1, right? So yeah, and that was a devastating thing about it, right? Not being able to contact anyone. And again, you remember these islands are smaller. So, we're not battling with Puerto Rico or anything like that. We're just saying that just as much of the aid that was being sent and the attention that was going to Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands needed it the same way, keeping in mind that we are smaller, so the devastation and the impact is much stronger.
I understand
And
totally.
to add to that, like he's saying, it's not to take away from Puerto Rico, because if you remember, when we were hit first.
Yeah.
And Puerto Ricans from the island took boats over to donate on their own private boats and brought supplies over to St. Thomas. And then the second storm, we got hit again, and then they got hit.
Because in the chain of islands, St. Thomas, St. John are further down.
Right.
The storm
Yep.
was coming north, hitting them first, and then hitting Puerto Rico, and then eventually St. Croix in the aftermath.
Yeah, St. Croix was actually the staging ground for a while. So after we got hit the first time, we were like, you know what, everything is devastated, but we at least have St. Croix still. And that was really the staging ground to get things, services and everything to the rest of the islands. But then when Maria hit, they then took out St. Croix.
I want to give the viewers a visual. I want them to see some of the images that we were able to capture and really get a feel for what the devastation was like on the island. Please look at the monitors. Kim, can you please explain?
So this is Michon Trucking. This is a company who said, we see you hurt, we see your pain, we want to help. They donated trailers, and
Were they New York based or were
they are in Jersey, I believe, New Jersey, and they donated and said, we can fill this trailer up. Get your donations. So we have one of our teammates here, Roland Nichols, and one of their workers, and we couldn't do this by ourselves. We had people donations, schools donating, people bringing money, food, water, generators, which we got a list of what was needed. They donated
Batteries,
everything, and this is the trucking
non-perishables,
company
Pampers.
and the team, and they were able to ship this stuff to the Virgin Islands, and then we had a team in the Virgin Islands ready to help stage and receive. We had United Airlines donated a plane for us, and we were the first airline to come in with supplies. And they let some of our members take the goods in, meet it on the ground, but it was such devastation, they couldn't even get in on the island. They came into the airport and was able to pass it off to the people on the ground with the help of the radio station Adiatli, and get the stuff distributed. So we none of this was done solely by Freshwater Association. It's people who donated, people who chipped in to help, long hours calling. And one of the things I did want to share, like you said, we couldn't reach people, so it was hard. Social media played a big part. There was a young lady who, on her own, she had cellular and would go around and videotape the island. And when we got in touch with her, people would start live streaming her. Can you check that my mother's house is on this block? Can you knock on this door? And she was able to go around and connect families on her own.
It was a
So
grassroots
we
effort.
were so happy with what she did. We reached out to her and said, what do you need? How can we personally, because that's what it's about, community. So she reached out to help, so we gave back to her to help her with the supplies for her family.
And I would say that that's really a testament of the will and the determination of the people from the Virgin Islands. Although we were hit hard, although it was tough, they were resilient, they were strong, they kept on working. And just to see organizations like the Freshwater Association doing everything they can, it brought people together. So although it was a tragedy, it was also the blessing in the sense that you started to see the rebirth, the rebuilding, and the resurgence of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
I don't want to just swing past the tragedy because I hear the numbers and they differ anywhere from 134 to 112 fatalities, deaths, either directly or indirectly related to the hurricane. Were you guys touched in any way by those?
I didn't have any family members who were touched. I heard of a schoolmate of mine who went to school with me who unfortunately passed away. She lived in Ross Valley in St. Thomas, and it was devastating, right? So I wasn't personally like family members hit, but of course, because the islands are so small, when people get hit, you know, it's almost like your cousin, your brother, your
Yes.
sister. These are people who you're close to. So the pain of those people who passed away because of this hurricane was felt by the entire U.S. Virgin Islands.
In terms of the economic loss, it's been projected that over $64 billion in terms of infrastructure, public and private, homes, commercial businesses, all totally lost. What does something like that mean to a place that was already economically compromised by U.S. policies?
Yeah, Kwame, that's very difficult to deal with, right? Because first of all, the islands are small. When you get hit like that, our major industry is tourism, right? So no one's going down there to fly, no one's visiting, there's no trips happening down there. So when you take away those businesses and all those entities that were there, and then you still don't have any revenue coming in because you don't have any more visitors, that makes it a very tough situation for the people who are down there. And that's why, from an economic perspective, the hope is that, in this rebuilding effort, they get the opportunity to take part in those jobs. But look, quite frankly, there wasn't enough down there, and it's difficult to really deal with. So you have people who are hungry and who are jobless and have to figure out, and that's why you had such a huge exodus from the islands. So many people had to leave. And while it would be lovely if they could stay, it's just like if you can't survive, what are you going to do?
Exactly. How do you meet the immediate needs of food, clothing, shelter? How do you continue to educate your children, give them some hope? One of the things that I saw in my research was through the public-private partnerships. A lot of people have been able to pour a lot of things into the island. Even before governments were able to get through the bureaucracy, private and small groups were able to say, you know what, we're going to do exactly what the Freshwater Association did, and we're just going to get it done, and we'll worry about the logistics of it later.
Yeah. Well, look, I look at it this way. People decided to jump and then build their wings on the way down. And that's what it was. Let's go out there. Let's figure out what to do and figure out ways to get involved. Aim High International was able to partner up with elected officials from here in New York. And Speaker Carl Hastie from the New York State Assembly was able to get a contingent of individuals. And we actually went down there. In March, we were down there. As you talk about, education was affected. All these things were affected. We went to the schools. We went to the daycares. We helped to rebuild some of the infrastructure down there. So it was a very difficult situation, but it was great to see how the people of the islands were able to come together and said, you know what, an ounce of action weighs more than a ton of intentions.
Kim, is there any information on healthcare? I understand that some of the islands maybe had one major health hospital. What's going on with healthcare? I know that Medicaid was immediately granted to all inhabitants, and they didn't have to worry about how they were going to pay for it. But how are they going to receive it?
A lot of, again, donations. We have the New York Nursing Association, 1199. They partnered with us and they came through with a $10,000 check that was able to help the hospitals in the Virgin Island to rebuild scanning machines or order scanning machines. They submitted
For
supplies.
those who don't know, 1199 is the Health and Hospital Workers Union nationwide.
And they step by step everything we needed, whatever we needed, from crutches, an ambulance was donated to send down
Diabetic
because
supplies.
right, so it was to help those that are in need, especially at the hospital, because a lot of times you couldn't even get to the hospital. You had the nurses union, a team that flew down to do volunteer work, to go into homes, because a lot of people, again, you have your seniors, no one is there to help them get back and forth to these places. So the nurses union went down and volunteered to provide services for them. It's just hard when you can't reach, and like you said, you have a lot of people who left.
Yeah.
But you also have a lot of people, let's make it clear, that are using this as an opportunity to say they don't have, this is destruction, and now they're using our destruction as an opportunity to steal our land, to steal homes, and to say, I'm going to offer you this amount of money as a senior. That's a lot for some seniors. And they're giving this money to them, saying, I'll take your home. And these seniors are leaving. You're giving up your home. It's really your land you've just sold. And this is one of the problems we're facing now. I just came back from June. One of the biggest things, as you mentioned, with tourism, that's the biggest source of income. A lot of the major airlines aren't going in on a daily basis like they were. A lot of the hotels are not open. And the ones that are open, they're not at 100% capacity. So now when you're going there, you at 50% capacity, you don't have enough rooms, you don't have enough people flying in, you're messing with the income to help the island strive. So that's another thing that needs to be addressed to get the tourism back up and running.
Okay, let me stop you there. I have to cut to a break for a PSA. But we want to come back to that point, and then we want to deal with some of the post-traumatic trauma and stress and what people are doing, both physically and mentally, to recover. So we'll be right back.
Do you A, try to fix it,
like it never happened?
B, work with what you got, or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
We're back now. I didn't want to skirt over that because that's very, very important. There was an old saying, even here in America, that that when there's blood in the streets, buy property, and that kind of predatory situation is what we really need to avoid in the islands. Can you speak to that?
So a lot of things you're hearing is FEMA is there. FEMA is giving money for property. FEMA is helping in such a way. You have people who are doing land grab opportunities. So if your seniors are leaving and they're leaving these homes, or a lot of people, not even seniors, people who live stateside still have their home. When you have devastation like this, you're here, you can't get back to check on your home. And you have your neighbors calling you saying, there are people here trying to collect from FEMA on behalf of your house, saying that this is their home. And now people have to worry about getting down there to reclaim their home from fraud, and people are losing their homes just solely on issues like that.
Both land and homes.
Land
They've
and homes.
Been in many of these families for several hundred years.
Absolutely. And you also get people, recognizing that there's trauma, that, and they offer money, right? So I'll come and buy your property. My mother was recently offered $69,000 to buy her land on St. John. $69,000.
Which is a pittance
all
compared
right.
to the real actual value
Absolutely.
of the land on St.
Yeah,
John's.
so she's up here with me now, and I said, look, we're not selling. Let them know it's not happening. We don't care what they want to offer. It's not happening. We understand that when things happen like this, people try to take advantage of the opportunity, and that's why it's important that we are able to educate our people to make decisions not based on emotions, but to be logical, to think about it, and that education component is very much necessary in order for them to make educated decisions.
I wish Delegate Plaskett could have been on the show. Let me please extend our warmest appreciation for her for trying to make it here. She had previous family commitment and couldn't be here. Hopefully she'll be back for subsequent shows. But how were the politicians, how they're dealing with this kind of situation?
Yeah, so with the politicians, on our end, when we partnered with the New York State Assembly to actually get down there, we reached out to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and we were able to get some ins there. But what I found to be, I guess, most impactful is working with the people directly on the ground, and working directly with nonprofit organizations that were down there. So we were grateful to the Virgin Islands government for giving us, the connection. They were the ones that let us know where there were hotels so that the folks that we brought down could be able to stay. For those of us who were from down there, we just decided to stay with family, even if we didn't have electricity. But that's what we decided to do. So I'm not really sure exactly how they functioned in the moment. Our goal was to just try to figure out how to get there, and we even partnered with some of the local organizations like my brother's workshop on St. Croix. We were able to work with them to help them to build a number of bunk beds to get them ready for people who didn't have any beds to sleep on and stuff like that. We worked with another organization, All Hands and Heart. They are a disaster relief organization, and we're able to partner with them to help them rebuild back some of the daycares and stuff like that. So from the governmental end, I wasn't really sure of the response. I know particularly Senator Janelle Sauro from the Virgin Islands, she was very much keeping us informed on social media of things that were going on, and I know she played a tremendous role down there as well.
Speaking of those kind of programs, I know here in New York City they had the Adopt a Family and the Adopt a Classroom, where many of the local school kids were making their donations at school. They were adopting schools in the islands and then sending things, school supplies and different things that kids might need. So definitely, like you said, a grassroots effort going around bureaucracy
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
need be, and definitely having a more human and more centric focus.
Yeah, and it's certainly difficult sometimes, even when you're dealing with elected officials, and that's not just the Virgin Islands, anywhere. Sometimes the red tape, and you just want to get things done, so you have no time to come with the excuses or anything like that. You want to get it done, and that's why it was important for us to work with those grassroots organizations that were on the ground.
So today, almost 11 and a half months later, do you think things are looking up, or what Kim, that's the ground ball for you?
I can say this much. For the most part, the electricity is back up. We, as an organization, don't get too involved with the political side of it. Like you said, with all the red tape, and you just want the stuff done. You don't want it to sit there waiting for political officials to okay anything.
Is
You
it full service, or is it 12-hour, 8-hour, 4-hour service?
Right now, you have pretty much full service with electricity. One of the problems that they have with the school system is a lot of the schools are totally destroyed. So what they're doing is, for instance, the high school, Charlotte Amalie High School, they have to share the school. So the high school will go to
shout
school.
out to Charlotte Amalie High School. My older sister, Patricia Ennis Smith, went to Charlotte Amalie. I wish
My
she were
mother
here
went
today.
there as well. So.
And I just happen to name my daughter Amalie just for the sake of
Oh,
the
wow.
island, yes. But the school will share, the high school will go to school, let's say in the morning for half a day, and then your Dorican school will go in the afternoon. They have to do split shifts to get everybody back up and running. And there's, unfortunately, and I apologize, there's a school on the Lower East Side of New York, an alternative school. And they were very instrumental, I'll try to get the name of them, in helping us do a lot of this donations, their school. They have their own issues, but they got together and did fundraising because they wanted to help. And they wanted to do live screenshots, like a sister school, but we were just not able because of political red tape to get screens up so that they can meet the people who are helping them.
Yeah, and as Kim said, right, a lot of the stuff was destroyed. We went to St. Croix, and we actually went to Central, where we were able to go in and talk with some of the students. We went to UVI as well, University of the Virgin Islands. And look, I want you to imagine a student knowing that the whole place is dark, trying to study for a test in the morning. It's difficult, right? So when we went there and we spoke to those young people, just hearing the resilience of those young people and their willingness to say, you know what, we had to figure it out. We didn't have a choice. And because we didn't have a choice, we just made it happen. I'm proud of those young people, and seeing them in the schools, at the daycares, at the Boys and Girls Club. It was really an awesome sight to see the energy and the enthusiasm, even though they faced that devastation.
My father often said he walked 5 miles to school, and he didn't have anything, so he didn't know why us stateside Yankee kids were so spoiled. I think they're resilient people, they're strong people, and there's nothing that they can't get through. In 1 minute or less, what are some of the most immediate needs that you think that our people here can do to help?
Absolutely. Well, we still need a lot of tons of supplies, right? The school year is getting ready to start back. Keep in mind the hurricane season is coming up again, right? So we need to be prepared from right now for whatever we would be able to provide down there. But people are still in need of supplies, of food, of all of these things. We need to continue donating. Don't let up, and publicize it more as well, right? There's a huge need for people to know what's happening down there, because with all the work that everyone did, and we commend the work, we know that more work could have been done if more people knew about the problem, right? So it needs more publicity, more people need to know, and we need to keep on sending supplies, partnering with those organizations that are still down there.
West Indians are a very resilient people. A hurricane, one hurricane, 2 hurricanes, 10 hurricanes is not going to put us on our back. We won't be down for the count. We always rise. One of my dad's famous favorite fighters was Emil Griffin, a Virgin Islander, and we all have that fighting spirit. Kim, you have a shirt here that speaks to that.
Exactly.
Can you please read it and show it
So
to
this
us?
shirt says basically that we're all we got, but we're all we need, hurricane relief. So this is one of the hurricane relief shirts that we had, and to do a fundraiser. And it was a big seller because it's speaking to volume as to who we are. We see destruction and they see opportunity for land grab. And just like you said, we fight and we get back up strong, but we need people to know you cannot give up. And just like you said, that hurricane season has left. Another one is coming up. So let's be ready and proactive.
I want to thank both you guys for coming. This was a fantastic show. It gives
Thank
me
you.
goosebumps. I remember, going to the island as a kid and both as a teenager, and it was a phenomenal place to be. Once again, thank you from the People's Forum. Thank you from our family. Thank you for coming, and we really, really
And then
appreciate
we'll
it.
just teach you always
Please
throw up the VI sign.
throw up
Always.
the VI sign.
VI strong
Okay.
forever,
Put those
yes.
fingers together, because we are together. Please donate. It is not over. Don't hesitate to send goods, supplies, books, even money. Thank you very much.